Get ready to hunt, build, and survive the multitude of dangers that are coming your way. Hello, my name is GamerZach, and I've been making these kinds of list videos for almost a decade now, and welcome to my 30 upcoming PC survival games in 2022 and 2023 list. Now, survival games have been a staple in gaming for decades and seem to have only grown in popularity, even influencing other genres to implement survival mechanics. This is a genre that definitely brings out the best and worst in us, so let's see the best and worst the coming years have in store. I've spent a lot of time on this, so if you do appreciate what you see here, please do like, subscribe, and share the video with your survival communities, as it really does help keep this channel alive and these videos being made. Also, be sure to vote on your favorite game from the list over at gamerzach.com/listhub. Extra games, bonus behind the scenes, and a Discord community you can join are all there, or follow on Twitter to reach me directly. You can also subscribe to this channel for more like these lists, looks at new games and nostalgic gaming content, and follow on Twitch to see me live. Alright, now let's get started. Jumping into nature, we begin with Among Trees by FJRD Interactive. This is, at first glance, a beautiful looking survival game that's in early access on the Epic Games Store. This is a small, vibrant survival sandbox set in a colorful wilderness world teeming with life. You'll have your little wood cabin located in the heart of a lush forest, and you'll be able to expand your cabin by building new rooms and unlocking additional stuff, including food cooking, plant growing, and tool crafting. As you explore this colorful, breathing world, from dense forests to dark caves, you have to stay safe as you explore, scavenging for food, catching fish, chopping down trees, and staying stealthy so you can avoid the wild, deadly beasts that roam the forests, and whatever else the night brings. Now, this is a sort of expected survival game in nature where a lot of people are into this, and there's a number of these sorts of games on this list, and I think the thing that really sets this apart is how the game looks. It is far more magical, mystical. It's hard to put into words, but you can see the footage for yourself on the screen right now. It looks amazing. It being in early access on the Epic Games Store right now, I know some of you are reluctant with that store, but that's where it is. So that's where you can find Among Trees. Going a bit more cartoony, we have Palworld by Pocketpair. Now, this is a brand new multiplayer open-world survival crafting game where you can befriend and collect mysterious creatures called Pal in this vast world. Kind of like Pokemon, but it gets a little bit interesting here. Make your pals fight, build, farm, and work in factories and use them as shields against enemies. And wait, this footage is starting to look a little bit weird, but I mean, you kind of get the idea. It's sort of like multiplayer survival Pokemon with guns and abuse. Anyway, I think you get the idea for what this is. You're going to be riding and exploring this world, building, making a life and farming, but then there's also factory and automation, dungeon exploration, breeding and heredity, poaching and crime, all in this multiplayer game. So it's sort of like a satirical, maybe more realistic, but yet silly cartoony approach to the Pokemon theme. And I think it's gonna be very interesting. It's aiming for a 2022 release date, and we'll see how that shapes up over the next year for Palworld. Staying with the same developers, it's Craftopia by Pocketpair. Now, this is a game that's already in early access with very positive reviews, so people are liking this one. Craftopia is a new multiplayer survival action game made in Japan, and it combines all the survival features such as hunting, farming, hack and slash combat, building, and automation. Farming will have 20 plus crops available for you to grow. The industrialization and automation is, like the last game, similarly kind of abusive, I guess you could say. There is breeding, exploring dungeons, fishing, and vehicles, along with a skill tree, character creation, and multiplayer. So this does seem similar to Palworld, but without the Pokemon aesthetic, I suppose you could say. And people are really loving this one. So I think you would probably like one or the other in terms of Palworld and Craftopia, so you can check them both out, but Craftopia is available to play right now. So if you like the look of it, you can jump right in. Next up, we've got Ankora Lost Days by Chibig. Discover Ankora and explore freely around this mysterious planet full of resources, but also dangers. Craft different tools, build structures, and unveil every corner of this wild planet, terraforming the landscape in this calm and self-described as cute as heck survival game. Now this one does have more of an indie look to it, as it's got these smaller sort of tiled worlds, and it's kind of a different flavor on the whole survival thing. Use the hammer to build structures, the shovel to dig and modify the terrain, and other tools to collect resources from the planet. There's 6 different biomes: forest, desert, meadow, snow mountains, and so on, and more than 100 map levels to explore, with various unique locations and hidden secrets. You'll also be leveling up with each action and learning new recipes, skills, and all that to improve your chances of surviving. The visuals are said to be inspired by Studio Ghibli films, and you can judge the art for yourself. So this one is a bit more of a cartoony, smaller kind of survival game, and it is single player, which might be the kind of thing that you might be wanting to get into for more of a chill experience, but we'll see how this one turns out, as Ankora Lost Days is looking for a 2022 release date. And then we have Nimoyd by Nudge Nudge Games. You've crash landed on Earth in 2702. Craft, dig, and fight through a vast and colorful post-apocalyptic world full of wonder, generated cities, dungeons, aliens, mechs, and an underworld. You could also find love or beat the ultimate underlord. Now, this is a pixel art survival game that looks kind of interesting, and it's got overground, underground, and all of that to explore. So this is something that is kind of setting itself apart. It's a randomly generated planet, so you never know what you're gonna get, and you'll be scavenging, crafting, farming, and surviving, as is the expected of a survival game. But you could also become a hero, customizing your hero based on 16 hero types, and unique character traits such as brave or lazy, and all of that. And you can create your own dynasty by building a home, choosing recipes, and managing your defenses against either other human factions or new alien colonists, or against the Underlord who lives deep below in the underworld. You will be able to play with friends by inviting them to your planet and go on adventures with them. Now, overall, this does seem pretty charming, pretty interesting, and pixel art. If you guys don't know, I'm a huge fan of pixel art, so I always like any kind of execution of that. And this does look pretty good. Now, it's looking for an early access release in 2021, with a final release sometime in 2022, but we'll see how that goes. So you'll be able to play Nimoyd, a survival sandbox, soon enough, and hopefully it does turn out well over the next year. Going a bit colder, it's Outpost Glacier by Doomlord Interactive. Outpost Glacier is an open-world survival crafting game where you maintain a small outpost in the middle of a frozen wasteland. Scavenge, craft, build, hunt, and do whatever it takes to survive the cold. Explore the world and find the many secrets and locations scattered around, and maybe you'll be able to have a bit of fun in the snow. Now, this is still in early alpha, and there's probably bugs and all of that, but you can check out the game already for free, as it's on itch.io. And it looks like you're going to be building up a base and surviving natural disasters and just the elements, along with unexpectedly large and dangerous wildlife. So there's quite a lot going on here. Now, features still in progress are multiplayer, a deeper narrative, more exploration and locations, more customization, and more crafting. So this is not by any means a finished game. But if you like the look of it, you can check it out, and it does seem to have quite a bit of promise. So since it's just freely available, you can check it out, and we'll see how Outpost Glacier progresses over the coming years. And then we go to something a little bit more historically inspired with Going Medieval by Foxy Voxel. Now, Going Medieval is a game that I've played a little bit of, and it's sort of like a 3D rim world in a medieval setting, but with tiered construction and terrain, so it goes up and down quite a bit. So this one has a colony base building sort of thing, and you'll be staking your claim in this colony building sim to survive a turbulent medieval age. You'll be constructing a multi-story fortress in a land reclaimed by wilderness, defending against raids, and keeping your villagers happy as their lives are shaped by the world. Now, this can be a pretty brutal survival game, but it does offer a lot in terms of colony building and base management, especially in the vertical building, going up and down. Just a simple sort of thing that really stood out when I tried this game is that you can build a balcony on your base and put archers up there, which then deal more damage to raiders. It's quite intuitive, actually. It seems to have a lot of depth to it. Now, Going Medieval is in early access right now with very positive reviews, so people are liking it. And the plan is to be in early access for at least a year, so it's planning for a 2022 release date. But games like this can often take a little bit longer than initially planned. Though updates and announcements are relatively frequent, so that's a good sign. And they do have a pretty clear roadmap, which includes adding in more natural caves, fire and flammability, mounted siege weaponry, accumulating snow, religious influence, a vassal system. There's quite a lot on the roadmap, so you can check that out. But basically, Going Medieval was a pretty fun experience in the little slice that I had, and it looks like there's going to be a lot more of it to come. So if you like the look of it, then go ahead and check that out. And then for a game which title really describes what it is. It's a Wizard with a Gun by Galvanic Games. Wizard with a Gun at first glance sort of looks like Don't Starve, but you're wizards with guns. So that's pretty much what you can expect from this game. Calling itself an online cooperative sandbox survival game set in a magical wilderness wrought with dangerous creatures and arcane mysteries, you'll be embarking on a journey alone or with friends to collect, craft, and outfit your wizard however you see fit as you explore the unknown. There will be magical weapon customizations, customized whimsical wizards, randomly generated biomes, cooperative adventuring, and systemic gameplay, that being experimenting with new spell combinations to find out how they affect enemies and the world around you the hard way. So this is aiming to be a kind of Don't Starve thing, where you do have to sort of mix and match, experiment, and find out what works and what doesn't. So overall, Wizard with a Gun is very interesting. It's being published by Devolver Digital, so you know how they are in terms of their games. They get the weird indie ones and really push them to 11 sort of thing. And it's planning for a 2022 release, so it shouldn't be too long before we get to experience this interesting take on the Don't Starve formula. Next up, we go for something that looks a bit more of a classic RPG sort of thing. It's called Frozen Flame by Dreamside Interactive. Embark on an epic fantasy adventure in this dying world of dragons. Choose a path, amass power, and gather allies to make a stand against the cursed forces and the destructive influence of the Frozen Flame. Decide the fate of the world through your actions in this open-world survival RPG. Now, this one is more on the RPG side of the survival spectrum. which may or may not be towards your liking, as this sort of thing can come off at first glance to be kind of generic, and, you know, maybe there's less standing out, but maybe if you're looking for something a bit more familiar, then this is going to be right for you. You'll be able to play alone or with friends on locally hosted games or join official online realms, and the goal is to amass enough power, resources, and allies to take the fight to the Citadel to overcome the Frozen Flame. So this is something you can do by yourself or cooperate in terms of just basically becoming the most powerful player or players around. Now, this is looking to enter early access towards the end of 2021, with the plan to be in early access for up to 18 months, they say. So this is looking at maybe a late 2022 or early 2023 release, though, you know, with a schedule like that, you never really know. Updates so far are generally regular enough, and we'll see how Frozen Flame goes as it fully enters early access and whether it hits the ground running or if it needs a little bit of time to warm up. Going a bit more serious, we've got Return to Nangrim by Sycoforge. Return to Nangrim is a dark first-person fantasy adventure with survival and RPG elements. Grab your axe and shield and go on an epic journey that will take you and your animal companion into the ominous depths of an ancient mountain. This game is also available in VR, apparently. Now, the main features of this game is you'll be exploring epic locations to unveil their secrets, collecting, combining, and crafting items, and interacting with the environment to progress. And you'll find and forge weapons to defend against the dangers that lurk in the dark as you become a master blacksmith. Your torch is essential, and you'll be choosing between hammer or axe. In this game, that's kind of dwarves versus zombies, basically, as we're seeing more of it. So looking at what we can see so far, this is more on the adventure side, as you'll be exploring through this world in a kind of procedural, kind of set, kind of experience. And it is promising deep and extensive fantasy lore with tons of side content, collectibles, and hidden items. So this is promising a lot, and it's looking for a 2022 release date. But if you're not convinced, there is a free demo available, so you can go check out Return to Nangrim right now and see if it's the kind of thing that you want to be waiting for. And then if it is, you can wait for it in the next year. And then for one of the biggest hits of 2021, it's Valheim by Iron Gate AB. Valheim is a Viking-inspired survival game that was sort of bubbling in the background at the start of the year, and then it just exploded, basically selling 1 million copies a week, and now it's got hundreds of thousands of overwhelmingly positive reviews. It exploded. It's one of the biggest games of 2021, and it's an interesting one. A brutal exploration and survival game for 1 to 10 players set in a procedurally generated purgatory inspired by Viking culture. You battle, build, and conquer your way to a saga worthy of Odin's patronage. And one thing that really stands out for me is the visuals. It's not low poly, it's not pixel art, it's sort of a low res texture kind of style, which really is reminiscent of late 90s, early 2000s 3D, and the nostalgic heart in me really does just resonate with that. I know some people don't like it, but I don't know, there's something about it and how it's not just low res textures. It's high res in a low res style. Anyway, besides that, the key features are the huge procedurally generated world, which you can explore and inhabit, and it's basically co-op PvE. Between 2 to 10 players, but they do recommend 3 to 5 players, though you can go it alone if you so desire. The combat system is said to be punishing dodge and block based combat with a wide range of weapons. And you can also build and sail ships, summon and defeat vengeful primordial bosses. There's a flexible home and base building system, including mead halls, farms, settlements, outposts, castles, and more. Item crafting, and there's dedicated servers for the persistent server style. So overall, I mean, Valheim is already a huge success. It's in early access, and it's planning to be in early access for at least 1 year. So the earliest it's going to release fully properly is 2022, though I can see, because of its success, for it to feature creep its way into years of development. But development is coming, most recently with the Hearth and Home update that arrived, and it looks more promising than ever. So if you haven't jumped onto Valheim, you like the Viking theme, and you're looking for a survival game, then this is going to be one for you. Moving on to something pretty different, it's Starsand by Tunnel Vision Studio. Starsand is a mystic survival game set among the dunes of an arcane desert. An open world full of danger, vast environments, and mysterious happenings. Explore, hunt, craft, build, and survive in a desert wasteland with a kind of a sci-fi alien aesthetic. You'll be exploring this arcane desert. You'll need to find shade, find water, and find life. But use your energy wisely, because if you put too much effort in the heat, you're not going to be doing too well. And you'll need to keep warm during the coldest nights as well. Surviving the environment will be hard enough, with sandstorms and all of that, so you'll need to tame the environment and use it to your advantage. Then, once you've built up your base, you need to defend it, as you are both hunter and prey. Insect-like predators come out of their dark nests, always looking for food, so protect yourself with fire and blow up enemies with explosive coconut grenades. That's something you can do in this game. The open world is said to be over 64 square kilometers, so that's pretty big, I suppose. And it's a lovingly designed world, they say, far away from civilization, but with many impressive monuments, artifacts, and creatures of the past for you to find and discover. Overall, this does look pretty interesting. There aren't that many survival games just set out in pretty much an open, desolate desert. And this has some... It's got an interesting look to it. There's a lot of it that is familiar with survival games in general, but this one does seem to set itself apart. It's looking to release into early access in November 2021, and they're planning to stay at least until summer 2022 for the full release. And things that are promised for the full release are the complete storyline, new gameplay dynamics, more locations, including the places below, more traps and weapons, better optimization, multiplayer co-op, and maybe a VR version of the game. So, Starsand is looking promising. It's got a ways to go, but you'll be able to jump into it soon if you like the desert aesthetic. Now, jumping straight out into outer space, we have Remains by SoloQ. Survival in outer space orbiting a planet. You need to explore what you've got and find a way to restore oxygen, create tools for your needs, and you have to beware of the dangers of outer space as you build your shelter in orbit and try not to die. This one is pretty much different from everything else on this list, so some of you might like it more than others. But survival in space is gonna provide some unique and different challenges. You will be able to mine things from the debris surrounding you and rebuild basically a safe space station for you to survive and live in. Eventually you'll need to set up manufacturing systems, creating mechanisms and production lines to keep you alive and progressing as you research new technologies and new tools and new all of that. Now, this is a smaller game, but it's been in early access since mid-2021 with very few but mostly positive reviews. So although it hasn't gotten a lot of attention, people who have found it seem to be liking it. And they do plan to stay in early access for less than a year, so we are looking for a mid-2022 release or earlier. So this might be a somewhat smaller experience, but a unique one at that. So if you're looking for a smaller but different step in the survival genre, you can check out Remains. Staying up in sci-fi and kind of space, a game that we've been watching for a while now, Occupy Mars, the game, by Pyramid Games. Survive and colonize Mars in a highly technical open-world sandbox game. Build and upgrade your base, discover new regions, conduct mining operations, retrieve water, generate oxygen, grow crops, and fix broken parts. This is basically setting up a base on Mars, and we've been kind of seeing bits and pieces of this for a few years. But they did finally put out a game demo that you can check out for free, and it's sort of labeled as a prologue, and the beta for Occupy Mars is supposed to be soon, but it's unclear exactly when. Though dev updates are pretty frequent every couple months or so. So it is still going. It does plan to release into early access, whenever that will be, and the early access phase will take approximately 1 year. Notably, the game will probably release with the basic stuff, and the final version that says will be developed over the beta year is more iconic locations, more functional buildings, more vehicles and robots, more entries in the knowledge base, more mining sites and resources, more interactive colonists, additional game modes, and basically more stuff based on player feedback. So Occupy Mars, the game, is sort of looking promising, though we've been waiting for quite some time for this one. So hopefully it goes into beta/early access soon, and then we can see how it's really coming together. Moving on to some zombie survivals with The Day Before by FNTASTIC. This is an open-world MMO survival set in a deadly post-pandemic America. Topical, isn't it? Overrun by flesh-hungry infected and survivors killing each other for food, weapons, and cars. You wake up alone in a world you no longer remember and set out to find answers and the resources needed to survive. Now, these urban zombie survivals, there's quite a few of them, and there's a chance that this one could be good. The goal here is to survive at all costs, by scouring abandoned vehicles, houses, and skyscrapers, and entering places no one else dares. You'll need to crush the infected and other players with modern-day weapons, and try to become a legend of this depressing new world. You will be able to take part in the restoration of former society in a survivor colony, and you can sell your loot and communicate with other players in, I think, safer zones. Now, from the footage shown off, it does look really good visually, and gameplay-wise, it seems to have a lot going for it, though this is an upcoming zombie survival game open-world MMO, so we're gonna have to keep an eye on this one because many have promised a lot in games such as these, and not all have delivered. So we'll see what the next day has in store for The Day Before. Continuing with zombies, it's State of Decay 3 by Undead Labs. The third main iteration of this series. Many are very hyped for this game. However, not much has been shown off, actually pretty much nothing's been shown off, and we don't really know many of the details of this game. You could of course look at the previous games to get an idea of what this game could be like, but you know, when you're researching these games, you know pretty much nothing is known when you come across everything we know about this game. Articles pop up, so basically we know nothing of State of Decay 3. The cinematic trailer looks fancy, and it does show off a deer eating a wolf, a zombified deer, of course. Otherwise it would be weird. So it seems like the infection has spread to the wildlife, so maybe more of a natural setting with fewer zombie humans and more zombie animals maybe, but really not much to be said. So if you're a fan of the previous games, State of Decay 2 still getting regular updates as far as I can tell. It's basically a watch this space for State of Decay 3. With more zombies, there is Reborn Survival by PixelCat Games. promising a new survival experience. Survive in an open world with PvE and PvP, missions, bandits, a story, and more is what this game is promising. It's an open world survival game with RPG elements and zombies. You will have to survive in terms of collecting food, water, medical supplies, gear, and weapons. And there's a reputation system and towns and villages that you can reinforce. A trade system by trading with other players and running your own store, safe zones, global vaults, hostile animals, bandits and zombies, dungeon-like zones, and generally loot, gear up, and fight as you survive in this post-apocalyptic world. Now, looking relatively similar to many other open-world survival experiences, at first glance this does seem a little generic, you could say. And maybe it will be, or maybe it will bring something new to the table. You really never know with survival games. But we will know a lot more as it approaches a winter 2021 early access release, and it's planning to be in early access for between 6 to 12 months, though as I've mentioned, early access estimates are almost never true. But they are also planning drivable vehicles, player basements, and I think the mission system with the reputation and also things like faction items won't be there on early access release. They'll be developed over the coming year. So maybe this will turn out to be good, but we'll have to wait and see for Reborn Survival. And then for probably maybe the most hyped game on this list, it's Sons of the Forest by Endnight Games. The first game was a big hit, and we've seen a couple trailers for Sons of the Forest showing off, well, a prettier world, more dynamic building and constructing and discoverability, and it looks really good actually, you can see from the footage. And it seems like you'll be putting the creatures around you to work as you learn to survive and build up in a hostile and isolated world. But we have to hope that it can actually live up to all of these expectations and to what it's shown off in the trailer, as it's been a couple years since the game has been revealed, and it's unclear exactly when this is gonna release. It's sort of slated for a 2021 release, but nothing has been confirmed, and I don't think we've heard much since December 2020. So I wouldn't be surprised if it is delayed into 2022, or we could get a surprise release. It might be early access, it might not. We basically don't know much. All we can wish for is that it delivers on its own promises for Sons of the Forest. Now, running away from zombies into a more shrunken perspective with Smalland by Merge Games. In a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids moment, Smalland is a big adventure on a tiny scale. Multiplayer survival in a vast, hazardous world with various natural dangers. You are small, surrounded by massive creatures, or rather, you're tiny, surrounded by normal-sized creatures, but they, perspective. And you are basically at the bottom of the food chain. Craft weapons and armor, build encampments, and explore a strange new land. And you won't just have to survive the creatures around you, the weather itself will pose a threat, and it dynamically changes the flora and fauna around you, so things won't be quite the same all the time, which is very nice actually. Taming these creatures is also a big thing. You can work alongside them, gaining their trust, earning allies and mounts. And gameplay, you can either go solo, PvE, or PvP. And overall, this is looking better and better. This was revealed a while ago, and it looked kind of rough at the start, but the footage they're showing off now does seem very much improved. And it is looking for an early access release. And early access is meant to start sometime in 2021, and it should last, well, basically as long as it needs to be, but hopefully between 6 months and a year. But Smalland isn't the only one going for this approach, and it's basically trying to be competition for a game that's already playable. So let's move on from Smalland into another small game. That small game is Grounded by Obsidian Entertainment. Now, Obsidian having a very good reputation. Grounded is a vast, beautiful, and dangerous place, especially when you've been shrunk to the size of an ant. It questions, can you thrive alongside the hordes of giant insects, fighting to survive the perils of the backyard? Now, this game has been in early access since the middle of 2020, and they say they want to do a full release sometime in 2021, but we're approaching the end of the year, so it might be on time. Otherwise, at this point, I would expect a 2022 release. You know, game delays, it's sort of the thing through the global pandemic, you know? Anyway, it is a reactive world that you'll be exploring, where insect life reacts to your actions. Base building is a big part to building up a shelter and your tools. It's critical to your survival, and you'll be able to craft weapons and armor, allowing you to better fight and explore. Online co-op is a big thing. A lot of people like to play this one multiplayer with up to 3 friends, but you can go alone, of course. And gameplay is centered around basically free play, or you can go through its mysterious story campaign, and it's always nice when there is actually a campaign to follow along. A lot of these survival games are just sort of, here's an open world, go do your thing. It's nice when there is a story, even if you don't have to do it. Anyway, this has been in early access on Steam with many very positive reviews. People are liking this one. And it just recently got a Shroom and Doom update. And Obsidian recently being acquired by Microsoft. I think they have all the budget they need to complete their many projects, which are ongoing right now. So if you want to jump into Grounded, now's a good time. Or you could wait for its planned, hopefully soon, full release. Going a bit bigger, it's Last Oasis by Donkey Crew. Keep moving. Your base is on the move here because the world is dying in this nomadic survival MMO. You can build walking mobile bases to travel to new lands, join up with a clan, and fight for territory. Resources deplete fast, so you gotta scavenge, pirate, and trade your way to stay alive, and then move on. The sun itself is a major threat as it burns the lands, turning it to dust, so you have to keep moving to stay away. But go too far and there's just impenetrable ice, so basically this is not a great world to live in. But thriving is an option if you do well enough. And I know with many of these MMOs with bases, there are some concerns, so just some notes there. There's no offline raiding, so if you're concerned about that, that's answered there. Combat is melee for the most part, and of course walker combat, so your bases can be fighting each other basically. And although it is centered around a multiplayer experience, there is a solo path for you to go, and maybe you just team up for some of the larger creatures and challenges. And just as a homage to Dune, there's sandworms, because, you know, everyone likes sandworms. Anyway, this game has been in early access since relatively early 2020, but with mixed reviews. It's got a lot of reviews, but it's floating around the 60 to 70% mark in terms of positivity. So a lot of people are sort of into it, but not everyone's quite on board. And the early access timeline is supposed to be 1 to 2 years. So early 2022 is the sort of end marker for when this game should be completed. Though with usually games with mixed reviews, they tend to go on a little bit longer in development until all the kinks are worked out. And we'll have to see if they can do that for Last Oasis over the next few months. And then for another big mobile-based survival game, it's Volcanoids by Volcanoid. This is a first-person base-building survival game set in a steampunk era where humans and technology meet. Explore a volcanic island operating giant drills and enduring eruptions triggered by mechanical beings. This has been in early access on Steam since early 2019, so it's been a while, but it's got very positive reviews. 2 years in early access was the initial plan, though it seems like they got a lot of feedback. So it's going on a little bit longer, but it seems to be working. The key features are having that mobile drilling base, so you can stay safe underground or choose a material-rich location to explore. The environment is deadly with those volcanic eruptions, so you're gonna have to avoid those, as much of the land is turned into an apocalyptic wasteland with each eruption. And there are mechanical menaces, a hostile race of robots that use a volcano as a source of energy and resources, so basically they don't want you messing around with things. And not to mention the base management of your drill ship, which is a great name for it actually. Automate production, research technologies, and set up defenses to turn your drill ship into an unbreachable powerhouse. This one does look pretty good, and it's been getting good updates over the years. So although development is taking longer than expected, it seems like they are still using their time wisely. So if you'd like to jump into Volcanoids, you can do so now, because it's kind of unclear when the actual full release date will be, so I think it's pretty playable now. And then for one that looks pretty realistic, it's called Wildside, also known as Odludzi by V-Cube Studio. Wildside is an adventure game with survival elements, looking pretty because of the Unreal Engine, and you'll be hunting, building, and crafting items to survive in the wilderness. The game takes you back to the 80s and the sub-Carpathian forests, a place surrounded by wild nature and uninhabited by humans. You lose control of your glider and crash into the wilderness, so now you have to figure out how to stay alive, build yourself a shelter, climb and explore the world around you, and deal with wolves, bears, and boars, along with everything else that lived in this forest long before you came along. Weather will wear you down, and you gotta keep in good condition as you try to make it to the end of the story, which does say it's got 2 possible endings, depending on your decisions. And it just overall kind of looks like the camper's dream, doesn't it? Well, maybe the survivalist camper's dream. Also to note, there is fishing, swimming, and cooking of food and all of that. It generally, like visually, it looks great, and the gameplay so far does seem very, very promising. Though it was revealed almost 2 years ago, and we haven't really seen much more of it since then. So it might be upcoming in the next year or so. But just as a note right here, many of these games tend to end up either cancelled or abandoned, so hopefully this isn't one of them because it does look really, really good, but we really haven't seen much more since 2 years ago. So hopefully in 2022 we see more and maybe even some kind of release for Wildside, also known as Odludzi. Then we go a bit more primitive in the wilds with Tribe, Primitive Builder by Polyslash. Do you think you have what it takes to live in a world without machines and the internet? I probably don't. Here you can become an architect in primitive times and help your tribe thrive and expand. Explore this old world. As the architect, the voice of the elders, your job is to explore the island in search for everything that would help your tribe survive, collecting wood, stone, mud, leaves, whatever it takes, using your environment to your advantage, or you might perish like many of the civilizations before. The island is your canvas. Using those resources, build up your tribe. Upgrading techniques using advanced materials to create more durable and larger buildings, and building up your reputation. Because you gotta build and maintain your tribe's trust or they might turn on you. Now so far visually looks great, a lot of these games do nowadays, but not much gameplay has been shown off, a bit of a flyby camera and that's pretty much it. With a planned release of some kind in 2021, we should be seeing much more soon, but it might be one that's pushed back, or maybe it's just going to be an early access release with more to come over the coming years. So we'll see how we do in a primitive world in Tribe Primitive Builder, maybe in a few months or so. Moving away from the realistic approach to survival games to something that's beautiful in a different way. Breakwaters by Soaring Pixels Games. Adventure through an ever-changing oceanic world that evolves with the way you interact with the water. Swim, sail, and fly to new islands with unique resources to build, craft, and survive. You'll be able to join your friends online to build a home and defend it, or to team up to defeat the massive titans to calm the waves. Though you don't have to have friends, you can do this single player as well. With a massive ocean and a dynamic open world, you'll be gathering crystals to refine them into items that displace and deform the ocean, which can reveal the rich resources below. Though things like golems and titans are gonna try and stop you from doing things like that. The titans, of which there are multiple types. There's a turtle titan, a serpent titan, and a crab titan. But generally, I think they all just kind of want to kill you. It's got a great look to it, maybe a little cartoony for some, but I think it's got its own charm. And it's looking to go into early access in October of 2021, with 6+ months of development from there. The full version promising more extensive and balanced exploration of the survival world, a compelling story arc, and the multiple Titan types. So expect those to come in a little bit. Overall, this one does seem like a breath of fresh air in the list, and if Breakwaters can actually deliver everything it's showing and promising, this should be a good one. Next up, there's Bitcraft by Clockwork Labs. Here's a sandbox MMORPG that encourages many different playstyles, ranging from farming, hunting, and crafting to city building and social strategy, rather than emphasizing combat alone. The game incorporates elements of subgenres such as survival games, sandbox games, RPGs, city builders, and strategy games. So basically, this is trying to be a lot. The game takes place in a single, massive, editable sandbox world for all players to interact with and to permanently change. And you can choose to work together with others, maybe even uniting cities and building empires across continents and oceans, or you could probably be a bit more of a hermit. Basically, Bitcraft kind of reminds me, like playstyle-wise, reminds me of kind of a magical sci-fi looking Salem the crafting MMO, if you know that one. Where you basically have this giant single world where you're building and surviving and maybe cooperating and stuff like that. And you really do have to sort of team up to build up towns and all of that on this procedural landscape. You could become a leader or, you know, just be part of the citizenship under someone else's leadership, but that's all to do with how the players interact once you get into the game. Basically, a lot of this is player-generated, player-directed, which can be interesting if the mechanics and systems are fun enough to go at it. Otherwise, this sort of approach can get a bit grindy or tiring after a while. So we'll have to see how Bitcraft, which is calling itself a community sandbox MMORPG, manages to get all of these things together in a way that's actually enjoyable for everyone and the varying different play styles. Because you want it to be fun for those who can team up with friends, but you also want it to be fun for those who just want to go it alone, you know? And getting it right for both in the same game can be very difficult. And then we move on to Retreat to NN by Head West. An open-world survival game set in a tropical environment. Meditate, base build, hunt, gather, explore, and craft. This does look kind of like a sci-fi realistic survival game in a more chill approach, it seems. The game is set in 3600 CE. After humanity had brought itself to the brink of extinction, a new society has formed. This society has a new reverence for nature and the Earth's environment. As a rite of passage, you are sent to the legendary island of NN to live off the land, increase your connection to nature, and become more mindful. Mindfulness being a big point of this game. And the developers have actually consulted with multiple mental health professionals throughout the process to ensure that this game is actually providing a relaxing yet engaging survival experience. So what's really setting this one apart is that generally the survival genre is about stress. You know, you're about to be killed, you're about to die, you're about to fall into a pit and get impaled on a spike, you know? But this one is sort of tapping into the survival aspect of gameplay and the survival aspect of all of this, and actually trying to make it a relaxing and meditative experience, which is interesting to say the least, though when they say things like that, it could also just kind of turn out to be a bit boring. Hopefully it's not. So we'll see if they can actually strike that unique balance for maybe a bit more of a niche audience in Retreat to NN. And then for a big one with massive hype, but not much to show really besides cinematics, it's ARK II by Studio Wildcard. ARK Survival Evolved has been a massive game in the survival genre, with many liking it and playing it for years now, so it's definitely established. And the sequel is promised, but they haven't really shown anything off besides a very fancy cinematic trailer, which is great and all, but it doesn't really tell us much. Besides that, Vin Diesel is on board, apparently. Now, the expected release date for ARK II is 2022, so I would expect we see a lot more to this game through the coming months, because, well, it's going to be 2022 soon enough. Though with a game like this, I don't know, maybe delayed to 2023. I suppose it depends what they show off over the coming year. Now, it can be very difficult creating a sequel to something that's already very successful. What exactly they will bring will have to be impressive, as ARK is still going strong after half a decade, I think it is. So yeah, ARK II is on the way, and we'll find out more later. Now, after the successful full release of Medieval Dynasty, the publisher Toplitz Productions wants to release another one called Wild West Dynasty, developed by Virtual Magic Games. Wild West Dynasty is a kind of survival game with cowboys, settlers, and gunslingers. Build your own ranch, provide food and wealth, and soon more settlers will join you in your quest for happiness. And of course, you know, have children, because that's the whole dynasty point. So either you'll be a successful cowboy out here in the Wild West, or you might just end up in the gallows, depending on what you do. Set in America in the 1800s. Found farms, raise cattle, dig for gold, and build your settlements and towns. There is a story mode to follow through with interesting twists and hundreds of missions included, is what they're promising. Or you could just build freely, free of any narrative or anything like that, because, you know, people like to do both. Now, if you know what Medieval Dynasty is, it should be pretty clear what this one is like. And this one does specifically say horse riding included, because of course. But there are additional possibilities like gold mining, rodeo riding, and other cowboy activities. Now, although these sorts of survival games, well, there are a lot of them. And Medieval Dynasty was kind of an unexpected hit, because there is also Lumberjack Dynasty, and that's another one out there, which was not quite as successful as Medieval Dynasty. This one could go either way. I suppose it depends how much people are into cowboys and whether the mechanics of the game really sets itself apart from Medieval Dynasty, but also is still good with all of those survival features and gameplay mechanics that people know and love. But have to say, they haven't really shown off any gameplay yet for Wild West Dynasty, so its estimated release in 2022, well, it might be a bit of a surprise what we actually get, but we'll see hopefully over the coming months whether it can deliver, or whether people just go back to Medieval Dynasty. And then finally, a game that isn't even a game yet, but I suppose might be the most hyped because we actually don't know what it is. It's Prologue by Player Unknown. Essentially, this is only a tech demo so far, which looks fantastic, but it's not really a game yet. It's supposed to be an open world survival thing, which is kind of an exploration of new technologies and gameplay. And the promise that they want to deliver on is to give players a unique and memorable experience each and every time you play. But, you know, we just we don't know what that actually is. We have a scene of a forest, and it's raining, and this forest looks amazing, and it's kind of hard to believe that this is what the game will actually look like, but if the game does actually look like this, at least we're gonna get something with some pretty nice eye candy, I suppose. But, you know, whether it's a game or not, I don't I don't know. It's something to look out for, so I suppose we'll just wait until they announce what it actually is. Otherwise, it's just prologue by player unknown. Alright, now for a bunch of bonus games, but if you made it this far, you probably enjoyed your time here, and it would be greatly appreciated if you could like, subscribe, share this video, and ring that bell, as it really does help keep this channel running. Head over to gamersack.com/listhub to vote on your favorite game from the list and for bonus stuff. Also, you can support more directly by using the Humble Bundle or Nexus referral links to buy these games or others, perusing my gaming merch store where I design my own products, or checking out the Patreon to really help keep the lights on. All linked below, along with the Discord community, Twitch live streams, and my Twitter, where I'm active and contactable. Now, for those bonus games. Starting with Kaiju. This is an epic, futuristic, multiplayer survival game that takes place in a beautiful open world, but it's currently in very early development. So you're gonna have to see how this pans out over the coming years, if it can get to release at all. And then there's Damsel, which is a first-person post-apocalyptic survival game that takes several decades after the Rapture. Spirits and demons invade through the Veil, making travel without supernatural protection or someone to watch your back a death sentence. Now this does sound and look very interesting, but it's also in early development and there aren't really that many updates to boost that confidence, so we'll see if it's still going. And then I'm gonna give a bonus mention to the survival game that came out of nowhere, Muck. It's a survival roguelite where you collect resources, find items, and build your base to survive as long as you can. And this game, it was pretty much just made on a dare, and it blew up. It's now on Steam for completely free with very positive reviews, tens of thousands of them. And updates are still coming, so this is definitely one to jump into if you're just curious, if nothing else. And then there's Survival Lost Away, which also involves quite a few zombies, but it's in early access now with few and mixed reviews, so it might turn out to be something better than it is, but right now it's just sort of okay. And that's 30 plus upcoming survival games that should be releasing through 2022 and some into 2023 depending on their developments. Which ones are you most interested in? Also, here's something I'd like to know. What is it about survival games that keep them so fresh? I was listing survival games almost a decade ago and they were just as popular then. Maybe it just taps into our built-in survival instincts that we don't really get to use much anymore. Meanwhile, if you'd like to see more upcoming games, this is only one of many, so drop by the other upcoming games list videos for so much more. Alright, that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it and found it useful, and I'll see you in the next video.